So this is an urgency. We have, and I've seen this because I've been investigating this for 4 years. I'm very involved in the child trafficking end. So for each day that people are trying to make a decision in time, we have the United States is the #1 consumer for child trafficking. We are the #1 consumer. And so first of all, I have an issue that the United States tries to enforce, and we try to attack on other countries with child trafficking. We like try to tell Haiti and all of them to do it. We're not even dealing with what's going on in our home, in our backyard. The supplier is not, you know, he is getting his child that he is having sex with. The main supplier, the pimp that the children come from in the United States is from Child Protective Services. They are the supplier. They are responsible for 88% of the children that are trafficked in the United States are from Child Protective Services. The issue that you also have with that is, this is documents from the FBI, 86% of those children that are being held by Child Protective Services should not be in that system. There is no abuse, true abuse allegations. There is no maltreatment, anything. I have heard senators in my state alone know that number. They know what children shouldn't be there. So when it really comes down to it, there's not really a lot of programs that we have to make to actually really put a dent in this. The pressure needs to be put on a charter that is Child Protective Services, that is contracted in the private capacity with our government, who is supplying 88% of the children being trafficked in the United States, as well as we need to deal with that we are the #1 consumer of purchasing children. And Child Protective Services a day, to kind of give you an idea on the numbers that we're dealing with. Child Protective Services unlawfully seizes 700 children a day in the United States. Now, if I know that we have 700 children a day that are not being protected by us adults, because we need to see it for our numbers, they have it. The government has these numbers. I've been in meetings with senators. They know. We've supplied this. The Trump administration and them have been supplied this information. There are 3 sets of books in every state. This is something that the people need to know. When a county tells you that CPS has 200 children on the books, that is a lie. You times everything by 2. So when you are looking at these numbers, you have to understand the science and really how many children we're dealing with that are missing and are being trafficked, as well as the system from CPS, if they are in a group home or if they are at a caregiver. If the child is in a group home, this is CPS across in every single state. If a teenager, a child leaves a group home, if they are past a 15-mile radius, their protocol with the police is to not find that child. So if a child gets past that 15-mile protocol, there's not going to be an investigation to find that child. As well as they only hold in a group home within our government, their own laws, that bed is only set up for 3 days for that child to return. If the child is not found within 2 weeks or returns, they are not the number counted on missing, exploited children. So any child that is in the government system that is being trafficked by our own system, that is a charter that our government has contracted with, if that child becomes missing, they are not considered as in the numbers with the missing and exploited children. Now, so you have 700 children a day seized by CPS. They are the #1 supplier to your children being trafficked. The United States is the #1 buyer a child, and I have the handbook that is over CPS in their own words. There was an investigation in the state of Massachusetts on child trafficking and rape. In their own words, in their handbook, if a child is in foster care and if that child is raped, that is not a reported offense. The quote from the director literally stated that that is not, it's not an evidence. It's not an injury, so it doesn't count. That is what you're dealing with. We can set up that we have men and women who buy children all day long. You can go to churches. You can talk about, and by the way, we are also the #1 supplier on buying porn, child porn. We can deal with those things. But if you are really looking for the solution to protect the children and to end child trafficking, you've got to go to the #1 supplier. And the #1 supplier is Child Protective Services, who is unlawfully seizing these children. And that is a matter of fact, that is in the FBI, it's in the labor. So those numbers are not even the children that are being reported by missing and exploited children. Now, when you look at those numbers, missing and exploited children, there are 800,000 children a year that come missing in the United States. That is your national emergency, not corona, not the flu. And our true national emergency is that we have 800,000 children come missing in the United States. It's reported on missing and exploited children. And we have a system that if a child is in government care, foster care, they don't matter enough for us to even put them in that count. The missing and exploited children and the missing and exploited number is registered to the Clinton Foundation. That is for a fact. I have done extensive research on this. I called the Missing Exploited Children hotline in Dallas, Texas, because Dallas and Houston is actually one of your hot places for child trafficking. I called, I gave a location less than a mile from the police department out of Dallas, Texas. I called the missing exploited children. I told them that I had broke free from my handler and I needed help immediately. I had been trafficked. And the response I got was there was no one in the area to come get me. So we can give, this is information that is very much available in the handbooks. There is a child, I have her case that I can send to you. I don't believe there is anyone that could read this case and say, I want to have 6 more months of committee meeting before we decide to make a decision to fight for children. There is a case of a 3-year-old that was in the hands of Child Protective Services. My question to anyone is, I'm just as frank as it can be, Vicki, and this is what needs to be said to these people. What is the appropriate age for a child to have a penis in their mouth? What is the appropriate age for a child that has been taken away from their home through a government agency to have a penis inserted in their vagina? What would be the appropriate age? Because there was a 3-year-old in Child Protective Services care. It's a very famous case. I have the entire case. She was continually raped over 12 times and pimped out in the United States at the age of 3, 12 times. That was that 3-year-old's normal life. It was finally reported. CPS did not take her out of her home. They put her in another handler's hand The child was burnt extensively for fighting off someone raping her. Nothing was done. The child ended up not surviving their injuries. A child that is in our system, the normal age of being raped and handled is at the age of 11. And at the age of 11, you do not have the antibodies like you and I would if we became sexually active at the age of 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. And the normal age of a child being trafficked in the United States is around 10 or 11. They can be sold over, in a 3-year period of time, over 6,500 times. And because of what they're exposed to, they are exposed to chlamydia, gonorrhea, syphilis, AIDS. And the child's life expectancy is that these children are normally dead before the age of 18 or 21. It depends on if we're looking at 11 or 13. There are 2 windows that are statistically done by the government. I believe, and I know that y'all been having meetings, and I respectfully want everyone at the table to fight. There's no reason for what we're dealing with. We don't need a new system. Every one of you should be advocating to shut down Child Protective Services, who is the provider for these children being trafficked. And the reason it is because of the money. There are bonuses given, cash bonuses, when they remove children from their homes. And when someone comes in and takes that child, if that child is not returned, that caseworker gets a cash bonus up to $3,000. If the state does not meet their quota with the children that are taken out per county, and the next year they do not get their budget, and that is even a quota if they miss by 1. We do not have a system set up to keep families united. We have a federal government system set up to fund the money for the states who, by the way, taking children in the state of Arkansas, and those bonuses and that federal funding is what pays for 56% of the government salaries in the state of Arkansas. Until you really get down to let's have a true conversation here, and there is no longer a price tag on our children to pay for government salaries, you will not have a fix for the child trafficking. You have 3 sets of books in every state. There's the first set of book that the government gets. There's a second set of book if you're fortunate, you know how to get. If you're really smart, you know how to get your hands on the 3rd book. It is a fact, and I can show documentation on this every day, of how there is a quota until those issues are addressed, and that we look in within ourselves, within the government, of literally shutting down the pimp of who traffics these children. You're wasting time. You may save 10 children, you may save 20 children. The education that we need to deal with is within inside the government. And the hard question there is, why is there a price tag on children? Why do we have a system set that if a child is removed from their home, there are bonuses? If we have where children, maybe there's a maltreatment issue in their homes, and why are we not building a system to provide food and to help these families, to provide for their children, provide support, instead of taking their children away and trafficking them, put them in another home? You really want to fix the problem? Become a support system for the families. With education, if there's a part of anger, it's because they've been trained that way. Work with the families so those children can stay in their homes. There is no system set up right now in the United States to return children. Absolutely not. It's in their handbooks. I can prove it every single day. Your Missing Exploited Children hotline goes to the Clinton Foundation. Every system that they currently have set up is not set up to protect the children. So every which way that we check, so even on money, so if the state tells you, like, if they give you a number on money that is being supplied on this fight, and when you get to the third book, everything is going to be ×2. And I'm telling you, if you start saying that in your meetings, Vicki, when you're speaking with them, and when you do that, they're going to know you know what you're talking about. They will actually start saying, well, yeah, you are correct. Now, how did you get that number? Yes, that is how many children we really actually have in the number. An urgency. I saw this with a veteran part on the suicide hotline, and I do have those recordings actually. So you have on training. The suicide hotline does not actually even help with veterans. It's a joke. We called over 42 times in 24 hours, and only one person told us to call 911. Before I went into where I'm at right now, and what I was working with and would be extremely beneficial is people like Matthew and them, that we get a true call center. We can start very small if we have to on one state, but we need a call center. Now, a lot of these call centers that we were trying to implement that actually can implement two things, and the funding is there. This is why I'm telling you this. This suicide hotline could actually go into the funding on the government level on the child trafficking end. The money is there. On the money for the hotline, for the suicide hotline, there is right at $7 billion that is allocated for the call center, and it was not being touched 4 years ago. Okay, so you could combine these call centers together, and you would have adequate training. Now, the issue is adequate training. So if you wanted to start on a state level, so let's try one state. Texas, Houston, Dallas is really huge. And the calls that come into the missing and exploited children, the mass calls are actually coming from that area, Houston and Dallas. So that's one reason why I say maybe look at Dallas if you want to do one state. Develop a call center and develop adequate training on how to handle these true emergencies. And a lot of people do not know the suicide hotline. The protocol for that to work there is that you're 18 and you do not have a federal crime, and that you're 18, you don't even have to graduate from high school. You have 6 weeks of training. And what people don't know on the suicide hotline, that if you're on the call more than 10 minutes and trying to talk a veteran or anyone else, because actually the suicide hotline is for everybody across the board. If you're a veteran, you push one. If they talk to you more than 10 minutes, that employee could be fired. So for an emergency situation, we could implement a call center and have adequate training, have true counseling, and working with the police departments. And when we went into with our military in Wichita is where I was starting this, is I understood we did not have a true call center. So what I was working with was meeting the police department. We actually had it in process with the fire department, everyone. We had our monthly meeting. We had a group. So there was a group in the police that were only involving with suicide. You could have a training that it's really, these police are assigned with child trafficking. If a call comes out, that's who gets called out. They have the training that they need to handle the situation. But you need to be working in conjunction with your sheriffs and your police departments with the call center. And so when the call comes in, they actually get help, and they don't get a call to missing and exploited children, and they just actually are getting returned back to their handler. Those are immediate things that if you did, would immediately start making a difference. That missing and exploited, I've investigated a lot of people on their board, and that's another phone call that you and I could go have another discussion on, not to waste time with Kearns and everything. But that number should not be it should not be tied to the Clinton Foundation, and they get federal government funding, and that should be addressed immediately with the Trump administration. And if that is going to continue, that funding should be cut off immediately. work on a call center, proper training, and to help when normally those calls are going to come in, and it's because they were able to step away from their handler. On the research that I did about 4 years ago, you have, if they get away from their handler, if they're in that location, you have actually right at less than 25 minutes to get that child out. With CPS, there was a child that was given in someone's care, and they were pimping the children out, and I was able to get a phone to her that only had my number in, and she called me, and I got her location, knew where she was, and I called the local police. They were going to go help her until they had the address, and they literally said, "Oh, no, 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 we don't go there." And those people are tied in with the government trafficking children. So then I called my NSA friend and I said, what do I do? He said, call the state police. I did call the state police. The state police came and they got her out and took her to the hospital. But then she's in the hospital for 72 hours. CPS steps back in, and because they were a part of it, they sent her right back to that house to be trafficked again. So call centers, education is very important. We need to educate, and the truckers are very helpful if you educate them on identification on the child trafficking, and set up that line where they can call you. They can give you a location of a child being trafficked. You've got to have a team that's going to be able to go in and rescue them and not put them back in the hands of the number one person that traffics the United States children. School education is very important with the children. We did that at my children's school. The children, the youth, because of Instagram and the social media, they really do think that they're meeting a 15-year-old, a 16-year-old, and they do not understand that they could be meeting a 19-year-old, a 20-year-old, 21-year-old. We actually had that happen in our school. And my kids were in a very small school, and probably, I don't know on a level, but when you have smaller schools, those issues are not being addressed. So you have these young ladies who are seeking out love, attention, and they think they're talking to this hot 17, 18-year-old. They give them a location, and unfortunately, like with Bismarck, and that person that was coming to traffic my daughter's best friend was able to look at her list. Therefore, he got all of the other children's numbers, information on the school, everything, and he showed up to pick her up, and that's not, of course, who she thought she was talking to. And unfortunately, our school had pretty good security to stop it. But it was like 7 parents. We had to change their phone numbers. We had to have security at the school for a couple of days. You got people like in the sports industry that could walk into these schools and they can teach these children because they don't hear from the parents. They think we're just being overprotected. We're being stupid. You got sports people that would be willing to go in and educate the children. Hey, social media is not, you may not be who you're talking to, and this is what happens. You get child trafficked, you get sold. Children are the number one. It used to be guns and drugs was the number one commodity to be sold. It is now children. A gun and a drug can be only sold once. And children can be sold, and handler will normally sell a child 6,500 times before they're no good. A child is typically having sex 12 to 13 times a day. If we could work that are willing to work on the call centers, and that we could set up a call center, that would really help to give the avenue to these children and adults. This is something that I think is missed on a lot of these discussions. You have children that are literally bred, or women who are bred to have children, and that's the only life they know, is to have sex their whole life. So they're still in the system even as adults. And a lot of times when we have these discussions, we forget about that. And so we need to have an avenue to support women and men who have been raised in this environment. They were bred to be suppliers to people that want these children to have sex with. And so these are some hard, deep discussions. But I know what it was always woke up people is when I asked someone, would you be okay today to have your 3-year-old to have a penis in their mouth today by a stranger? Are you okay with your 3-year-old being raped 13 times today? And normally when you put it like that, their schedule gets cleared and they're willing to come to the table to help. But that is the reality that we're dealing with. First of all, let's stop this funding. And this is what's going on here. We know this is what's going on. Why is this number identified with these people? Look who serves on the board with missing exploited children. Half of that board, if you gave me 2 days, I can show you on a map where they're tied to child trafficking. So why are we funding them? That is almost like with Epstein and all of them. We're literally funding them, and we have to stop as the people. And the government does not create money. That money comes from us. So like when the government says we're giving you something, where did that money come from? That money came from taxpayers. We have to stop being the gatekeepers because we're not getting involved and we're not saying no longer that funding go to this. But I can help you with the numbers as well as on a call center. I've already broke that out. We were able, and it was not the money that people think it is actually. We were talking about like true counseling, full training, having certain people on staff to handle the suicide hotlines and what the call center, what it could bring in, and even how to what we would be able to contract. Actually had talked to other organizations that if we couldn't take the calls, we would roll over to another call center. But I did that work like 3 years ago, like have it all broke down. And so that would save you time that can give you that information and then you can change it. You are more than welcome to change it however you want it. But it would give kind of people a vision. And because of actually that work, and when I showed this, I have on video, it was horrible calling the suicide hotline. And by the way, none of the suicide hotlines on the military works, not one. And I've got it on video because of that work that I did and educated the people in Arkansas. And Arkansas actually opened its own call center because of that work. And so Arkansas now has a call center to handle their own suicide hotline. It is, state controlled. So that was kind of a benefit. But the expense, that is where I found the government has right at $8 billion. It's just sitting there. No one's using it. So if anyone tells you the funding is not there, I can give you actually the source of funding that can be opened for a call center that could be a dual partnership for our veterans to give them true help with the suicide, which would bring your numbers down, and it would also bring the security for our children being trafficked. Okay, so you have Coons that serves on the board, which is in, he owns, he's in part of the apartment that is where Obama had the apartment that Vanderbilt was in, that Anderson Cooper's brother fell out of. Coons actually had the rabbit that he actually sold that was ungodly amount to guitar that actually was inside that was made of children that had been trafficked and were kind of melted into that thing, and the cost was unreal. And so you've got Coons, you've got a few other people that are, I've got their pictures in background. I will send you a list of them. Clinton Foundation, though, that is a known fact. we have tried to push that with the Trump administration and publicly over and over ask, why is that? Then I actually had someone that got away from their handler and did a Facebook Live begging for help. They, is what I was just telling you, they were a child when they came in the system. They were now an adult. So that's something you have to be very mindful of. They got away from their handler and they called the 911 system, and the 911 system told them they didn't handle that. So they gave them the number to the missing and exploited, or the child trafficking hotline, and the hotline there, and which ties into that. And they call them, and they said they were sending someone on their way to get them. This is a Facebook Live. The person that picked them up was their handler. And so we knew right then, and those calls were being directed and they were being tracked. And this is in the Dallas and the Houston area, which is where your number one calls come in to that number. So I watched at a horror this woman screaming in her car to that person on the hotline, how could you have done this to me? You've turned me back into my handler. And that handler actually was wearing law enforcement uniform. And we do not know what happened to that person. So when I watched that, I waited a couple of days and I thought, I wonder if this is the same thing I see on my suicide people, my veterans. So I called, I gave the address 1 block from the Dallas Police Department. And I said I had been trafficked and I wanted to know, could I get help? And they told me they had no one in the area to help me and to call back later. I did a test on the suicide hotline. We called for 24 hours, 41 calls. Only 1 call told us to call 911. 1 address, I gave them the address of the hospital parking lot, said I was a veteran, I was suicidal, I needed a location to go to, and they sent me to a state about 10 states over, and I literally gave them the address to the parking lot of the hospital.
Huh.
I've got where they laugh. So we're funding these things. The funding is there to have a system that really works, though. That's what's irritating. And then I talked to the sheriff in my county before all of this happened, and he was very upfront with me. He said that the issue is when they address child trafficking, or they arrest someone that's a handler that's working within the government, and they go take them in front of there, and the judge becomes the gatekeeper, and the judge refuses to prosecute them. And so the sheriffs felt like their hands were even tied of even being able to get help. So in this process, there needs to be a discussion, whether it's military trained or whatever, militia. I think that the government at this point should have the SEALs or whatever that's trained to come in and truly protect the children. Right now, you do not, there's no way you will convince me there's any protection for the children right now. And you can do executive orders all day long, and I support those, so don't get me wrong. I'm very glad that Trump did the deal that if you are child trafficking, you can be put to death. But we've not dealt with CPS, and they are the supplier to all these people. They're the supplier to Hillary Clinton. They were the supplier to Bill Gates' wife. And then that's where you tie into the cargoes, containers, and the shipping and everything. It's a huge rabbit hole, but there are very basic things on education. And now be very, very careful, please, when you are looking at organizations and you're looking at motorcycle people and everything, because the motorcycle group that claims to help children and protect children in my state, in Arkansas, and that is not what they were doing. They have a contract with CPS, and they are the ones that are moving the children from the state of Arkansas to the Mexican brothels, bocas. So please be very careful and mindful when you are teaming up with these organizations. Make sure that you're not giving the enemy the plan and you're not putting the children in their hands. And I'll send you like the handbook. I think it's a huge statement for anyone to realize that the person that's overseeing protection of children, when they make a quote, and it's literally printed in the handbook on the audit they did, that a child being raped is not a reportable offense because you can't see the injury. And that's basically what she said. And so that's how they think, which again is another part of education. Another thing that really needs to be stopped, that these bonuses to remove children from homes, there should never be a price on a child to remove them from their home and basically destroying homes. You got a price tag on children, you're always going to have an issue. And that is where the dog tag part comes in. And what people do not understand, in CPS and the vaccine, the way they're trafficking children, that funding is coming out of Title IV, Title V, Title VI, Title VII, Title IX, Title 21, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, and the 401k system. It is that high up on the money that we're dealing with. When children get moved, even on transportation through CPS or police, when they're in transit, that is being billed under Title VI and Title VII under transportation. So like even when they get moved to a court system or they get moved to to another house location, they're not only making money on that child for being in the custody, any form of transportation is being billed. The best way that you can kind of explain this to someone to understand the magnitude of what is going on, you have to look at them as commerce. So when you kind of can explain that to someone in a business sense and on this level, as long as I'm making my argument as a person, a child, and on the money end of how they're making all the money, they did not resonate. Now, if I sit there and said they see you as commerce and goods and commerce, every funding, every way they move you, that's how they move you around, that's how they're making money off of you. For some reason, it resonated and they understood what we were looking at and what you're up against. Call center, education. This is something that I do know actually saved a child in the state of Arkansas that I had taught their mother. And this is a very easy meme that we could put on education. So from the very beginning, since my children were like 4 or 5 years old, we had a certain password that only my children knew. And so if someone was picking them up from school and that maybe they didn't know that I was not going to be picking them up, or and I'm talking about, this is even grandma, and if that person was picking them up and they didn't know the password, my children wouldn't go with them. So there are very simple things that it's education, very simple. So that is, my children were taught that around the age of 4. The school itself did not even know that password. Like if my children were leaving like at 9, and I remember one time grandma showed up to pick them up and she didn't know the password. And so my kids were like, I can't go with her. Like, you don't have to call my mama. And so then, of course, my kids were able to talk to me, and I used to put them on the phone. I would not even let my children say it was okay. That adult or whoever was picking them up had to give them the password. This is something that very easy to do. Again, just sometimes people don't think about that, but I had ingrained that in my children from the age of like 4 and 5. And my children still know there is a password on certain things. They don't hear that password, they're not going to talk to you. And so that is just like a meme said that we could push out. And I know that worked because actually A couple months ago, there was a lady in Arkansas. Her child stayed on the aftercare school events, and she got a message looking like it was from the grandmother on the child's text, because now you can use an app making it look like it's from mom. And so it was like from grandma saying, come outside the building, I'm coming to pick you up. Mom's not picking you up today. The child was in 4th grade. And so she showed the after school teachers, hey, grandma's picking me up. Here's the message. They pack her up. She's right out and signing out. And what saved her was she said, what's the password? They were on the parking lot, and that person did not know the password. And it was someone that actually is involved in investigating child trafficking that has worked with me. And they went through the camera. I mean, there was police reports filed on this, and the school was very thankful, and because they were about to send that child out the door. So these are like little buddy things on education. When you're talking about like the veterans and the motorcycle, this is something that really helped us on implement, like people like Kara Wiskowski. There's a lot of times that she is being harassed by the ex, that and Sasha and everything. It would really be nice if we could have a networking system of veterans that we can trust, that are willing to like be there when they go to court to help escort them. And then these children, if you're raping a child and everything, but you know that there's 20 military people sitting there supporting mom, the judges can be more mindful not to give that child to a sexual predator, as well as it would be nice to have a networking system. Hey, Tom is out here harassing me. There's a note on my door. I can't tell you how many times Kara calls me at 2 a.m. Michelle, there's someone out here and I'm scared to death. And the police are not on her side, on her end. It would be amazing if we could build a network system that when that happens, we can call someone and say, hey, we've got an issue here. Can you please go in at the park, the driveway, just to let people know there's someone there, security. And if we could have a networking system and going in these courts, I promise you, these judges will stop giving these children to these predators. If you've got 10 witnesses of military people, and the judges do act different when those rooms are full. So if we could work, and that doesn't cost us anything, and like you just said, are retired, looking for something to do. And that would be, that's accountability for a judge. It is letting that predator know, I got your number and we're here to protect that child.
Right.
And so that don't cost money. We just need a network and get that out there. They may try to help you. They may not. We can call, like, what I would call it. If I can get somewhere, then I just tell them, I say, we are in the process of doing research, and I needed to know how you're handling this call. Being recorded. That is what we did with the veteran care, and on YouTube on the website. There was not a single military website. You click on their suicide links, not a single one marked. Not one. National Guard, nothing. So that hotline kind of goes into the same thing. I recorded showing people clicking on the website for suicide help, and it would be, you are an unavailable administrator. So what is so sad about this is these are very easy fixes that can save a lot of lives in multiple levels. You can save people from not committing suicide, because the number 22 is not correct, as well as we could do training on saving children. So when I was developing my veteran program, I was already actually working and going into the fire departments and the police departments. And what I found overall was they did want help. They wanted, they just didn't know how to handle these suicidal people and everything. So what we were setting up was a system working with the police department locally and the fire department. We were training them on like what to look for. If someone's suicidal, if it was a veteran, how you would handle it differently. You can implement those same things with child trafficking or a horrible situation. But I cannot tell you how many police departments were extremely willing to allow us to come in there and do training, because this is what's happening. If a police officer, you could talk to a police officer and they're going to tell you, and PTSD for a police officer, there's nothing more that screws them up is when they get a call and they're having a call on a child that is not alive anymore, or they are witnessing a child and taking a child to a hospital like Jamesville, who went to the hospital 9 different times over a rectum prolapse. Now, if you have half of a heart, do you think those people are just able to go to the next call and not think about that? If you have a heart, and we were talking to the sheriffs and the police departments and the fire department, first responders is actually who we were working with on help on educating them on sources and how to deal with these things. And we were giving tools for them to be mentally okay and an avenue of what they were witnessing. So if you're trying to start a network and you build a system of dealing with child trafficking, and then you go in these fire departments, the police officers, and say, hey, we would like to offer for free training on these to help your fire department, your police officers not suffer from PTSD, blah, blah, blah. And the reason they want you in there is because every time they go in there for these issues, they get stuck. So what they were willing for us to come in for educational reasons, because they lose time when the fire department and the police officers have to take off because of what they witnessed. So what we found was that they were willing, and they actually were even willing to help fund the educational, because with our work, teaching them how to deal with PTSD, how to deal with suicidal veterans, it's the same principle. You can train them on how to recognize child trafficking and what to do. Go in, educate them, and then you will have an avenue of changing the course of what we have right now, where the sheriff, the police, they start representing and working for the people. These are very simple things that you can do, and we were doing it. We were making great ground. I'll send you a copy of what Wichita, Kansas has. Their model, I've never seen a system like this. They literally had a handbook that dealt with homeless, child trafficking, and they had certain police officers in their department that dealt with these things. And all the organizations that were not government, we all had this directory. We had a meeting once a month where we all came together. So if I found a homeless veteran at 9 p.m., I could call another agency or use my book, and we were all working together to make sure they were off the street. They were provided medically, and their model was really amazing. And I do have that actually with me, because so there are things in there that y'all could implement. There is something that I always say, and I know a lot of people say this is very hard to take in, and what is happening with children and what is going on. And I know these are hard discussions, and a lot of times people don't want to hear it. I have 2 rules. If we don't talk about the elephant in the room, we can't fix it and we can't deal with it. So we must talk about the elephant in the room. And my other rule that I had when I went to help the Air Force bases and everything was that we were going to work and network together and be very transparent on all of our steps. And once we kind of had rules on the table, I know that child trafficking is very uncomfortable for a lot of people. And so we have to be mindful and respectful, because a lot of times people, they don't know how to handle it. And that normally changes that, and they put up their big girl panties on when I say, well, how uncomfortable is it for a 3-year-old to have a penis and been raped 12 times? That's uncomfortable. So I understand that's uncomfortable. These discussions are hard to listen, and we're uncomfortable. We got to put those feelings aside. We've got a 3-year-old that doesn't have a voice. We have 7-year-olds that don't have a voice right now. We are their voice. And we've got to come to the table right now with answers, and all of us work together and make changes. It's a very hard discussion, and I'll give you numbers. And now for like Matthew and them, I have multiple pictures of their routes. Literally drawn out right now. And there's a lot of things that I have hand-drawn maps to the Queen Mother of Darkness, their entire locations, where in the month of October you have 10,000 children normally are sacrificed. So I have some locations of places that if you were speaking to the right people that would really do something, then through Tank, I'm absolutely willing to allow Tank come to the table with them with my work and submit it. That type of work is only going to be submitted to people that really want to do something. That work that I have will put people's lives in danger, but it is a way to end this. And so, that kind of work that I'm just letting you know that is available. I do have it in multiple places, but that work would only be released and through Tank being sitting at the table and with me, that I'm going to make sure that paperwork is actually going to someone who's really going to give a damn. Another aspect of this, just to kind of keep in mind, so my organization with Wounded Healer Project, I was actually already approved because I was with a clinic on our educational level, that doctors could come through our clinics, because we were doing a training on how to deal with suicide and PTSD and everything. And I actually developed a system where, like, when a doctor goes in, and like he could ask a question and it would go to this link, this link. I'd already built this entire system, this app, that is something that we could consider doing with child trafficking, and working with education with doctors and nurses, so that they know what the symptoms look like for child trafficking. We could build a system. We were already approved with my organization because of the training that I had set up. And doctors and then were going to be able to come in for training through my organization, because it was not your typical training was on how dealing with PTSD. And it was going to be able to go towards their hours for educational. So there is a protocol. I had mine set up for the doctors with PTSD. And I actually am still on I still fill that paperwork out through the veterans to make sure I'm still on that program where I'm in their system and I can see people. So as we're building this, that is an option that you could do. And the sheriff departments and doctors are more willing for you to come in and educate, because it helps them get their hours in. So another thing is really working with, and I hate Walmart and them, I mean, I know who they are, but there are companies that are like that you could reach out to, because they want hey, we're working on child trafficking and everything, that you can ask to have like a 2-hour educational class on Zoom, or come in, and the majority of them are willing to do that. And you can teach employees, what does child trafficking look like, and how to stop this. And so there's very, very easy steps that makes people aware that we are in the situation we're in right now across the board due to a lack of education. You know, I'm extremely passionate about this because I was raised in the church, and that's kind of why I'm very careful about these churches. I do know there are some churches that have been set up and they've taken money for this foster deal to set up child trafficking. There is a church in the state of Arkansas. I actually have all their paperwork, and they had 32 children, and they tried to set up a foster care like CASA in there, and they had 32 children. Within 2 years, all 32 of those children had been removed out of their homes through the state of Arkansas. None of them had allegations, but one family that child should have been removed. That church lost their entire children. They thought they were doing the right thing by helping foster care, helping children. They allowed the government to come in. The government watched them. You know, they had beautiful children, and basically it's over 40-something%, I'll get you the number, and that children are taken were pre-requested before they were taken. And so we have those issues. Arkansas, Texas alone, and I have 2 nurses that gave me affidavit. So Arkansas and Texas, that they take pictures of newborns, and if they send it to CPS, if that baby fits, someone wanted to adopt that child, they are going to act like the mother failed a drug test or the mother's milk had, I mean, it's unreal what they do, but they do that because the child, they sent that picture of that child to CPS, and it was sent out. Someone paid a high price for the child. That is what you're dealing with. And we can only fix the problems when you really understand the magnitude. It doesn't mean we can fix everything at night, but your key people, the people that are going and sitting at the Trump administration table, they really have to understand the magnitude of what we're dealing with. If you do not understand, it's basically like putting a Band-Aid when the whole arm is cut off, but I literally put a Band-Aid on a finger that the arm, it's not even there. That is actually kind of what I feel like is what's going on right now. You have to understand what we're dealing with. But there are steps that right now, Lawful America, and with what you have in your sources, that I really believe we can make a difference. And we just have to be the catalyst and the example to get these other people to wake up and come to the table and understand really what we're dealing with. Now for this call, when you guys speak with anyone on the CPS level, this is something that's not discussed, and Tate knows this, I know Sid and all them know this, and that is one of the teams that I work with, is Nancy Schaefer's team. A lot of people do not realize this, that when Nancy Schaefer was killed, and the next month, the person that actually gave her the location of the MERS in the airplane, and that woman was killed 4 weeks later. And after Nancy Schaefer's death, there were 6 people that were killed on her team. And if anyone says to you, well, we can't get rid of CPS, we don't know how to handle that, and that is not true. Nancy Schaefer's work is not missing. It is not gone. And we do have her work. And so if you can get to the level that someone's talking with you and saying, well, we have to protect the children, but we know CPS, they're beyond repair at this point. But we do have Nancy Schaefer's work that would be able to protect the children, rebuild the system, or a system that would protect children that really do not need to be in their homes. And so if you are speaking with someone and they ask you what is the answer, I just want you to know that we do actually have. Her work is not gone, and we have her work in possession, and it actually would work. And so, you know, I don't want you to go on a meeting or speaking with someone and say, okay, we know CPS is a problem, but what do we do? Then you can just kindly smile and say, well, You know, when the government decided to kill Nancy Schaefer, y'all thought her work died with her, and it did not. And so we could bring that to the table, and we can actually stop messing around and, you know, help these children. I cannot imagine. I know what it feels like, because I was raised in this environment, being raped at the age of 6 and 7, 11 and 12 inside my church. I do know what it's like to go to youth directors and people and no one helping you. And so I can say that from experience. That's kind of really why it's a big pet peeve with me on this. I do not understand why we have the tools that we have, and that we cannot build a system that when someone calls that we can't help someone. That's one of the reasons why I'm in the fight. A horrible feeling to be at the age of 7 and telling someone that you're being raped and no one will help you. It damages you. Like, I'm still recovering from those things. So we have to stop that. We really do. We've got to give people a voice and know that when they pick up the phone call or they go to an adult and say, hey, I'm being, you know, this person's not my parent, or this is my parent, I'm being raped. And teachers need to be educated to not blow that child off and just think they want attention. And even if that child is lying or attention, they cannot, in our schools, you can no longer blow them off. There has to be an investigation. You have to hear that child out. You have to find out, why did that child say that? And so in your school part of it, I think y'all were talking about going into the schools and talking to the women and everything. That is an avenue that right now can be addressed with the school counselors. We have issues where they think the child is a problem child, and so their child's lying. The child wants attention, and we have to get away from that. You have to listen to them, and you have to offer them an avenue, because what happens if you ignored that child? My youth director told me I was the first one that probably happened to, and so nothing was going to be done to the person that raped me, and I was going to cause a problem, and nobody would believe me, and because it's the first time, nothing gets done. So again, you have a form of education with your youth directors, your pastors, your adults. It's a huge deal on the educational level on children. Tell them, if someone doesn't listen to you, keep screaming. Go to another adult. And it doesn't matter if you are the first person that was raped. It is wrong. You've been violated, and they broke the law, and they should be held accountable. They're paid more to remove the child, and they get more money by removing the child. And the child not returning home, there's more of a bonus up until the child is 18. If the child is adopted out, the state continues to get federal and state funding. So there is no incentive right now with the system built for that child to be returned at home. We could build a system that supports the family. If it's because a single mother is having a hard time feeding a child, and let's build a system that helps. This is where in my system with my veteran program, I was actually working to come into the churches and the communities. So when they left PTSD and suicidal, when they got their treatment in 30 days, we had them avenues in their community, a support group in their community to help them stay on track and make sure that their needs are being met, supporting the wife, supporting the children. And so that was an aspect of my program that I had built. We were working on the community. So it was on it was on multiple levels. But the one thing that I realized for me, so I can just say this from even on my standpoint, I'm 43 years old, and my first sexual was at 3, and then I remember major rapes at 6 and 7, and then 11 and 12, and then my mom fortunately left, and when my mom left, then I was under my dad's care, and I was moved to a different school, and so those things stopped for me. And then about 2.5, 3 years ago, when I was traveling, and now I think this was the government's move, just to see if they could trigger me and traumatize me. I had an agent. I was in a situation that raped me on one of our overnight places, and I still believe it was to see if they could trigger me to get me to stop. And I can say this, that I am only okay today because the Speak Project and Tank and them and Sid Lane, all of them supporting me. And they may have not understood the magnitude of what I went through and what I grew up with. A few of them on this call do. But what helped me get through that was they brought Dr. Ryan in, who was able to remove it from a short-term memory to a long-term memory. So now I can discuss it to you, but I don't no longer feel it. And a half ago, when I talked to you about it, I could literally still feel the rape. I could feel this, I could smell it. I could tell you everything in that room. So because of Tank making sure that someone was able to work with me, that gave me a true avenue to deal with it. And now I feel like I'm just telling you a story. I can tell you what happened, but I don't feel it. I don't smell it anymore. I don't feel just how horrible it felt. The issue, though, is also I've been with State Project for a year now, April the 23rd, and they did not know from the very beginning my entire life, but I've had a support system for a year with them, loving me without, and something I did not know and had ever experienced, without having to change who I was, or they just love me for me, who I am. I don't have to give something. I don't have to compromise who I am. I believe a part of healing, that something really needs to be recognized in these families, these children across the board, is we do 1 week of healing. We come in rehab for 30 days. And this is what we were doing with our veterans. It was a 1-year commitment that we had support for them. Didn't mean they were in there every week, but they had someone, a buddy system, a veteran that worked with them for 1 year to kind of help mold them and support them to continue. And now I really think that support is very important, that when we are building a system to help victims, whether it's a buddy system, like your veterans who are retired, and my God, they're looking, to do something to help. If we could kind of look at a system that becomes like a buddy system to help them, they're there for them for a year, is really very helpful on healing. And
Right.
And I can say that from experience. This year for me has been an amazing journey for me, and I still have a lot of work to do, but I am who I am right now because Speak Project gave me the resources and the support. And honestly, the people on this call, this is the first time that I've ever experienced in my life that they love me, and I don't have to compromise who I am, and I don't have to be something that I'm not, and they don't ask anything in return. And a lot of people don't have that. So if we could do that on education and bring a good support system from these people, I think you would see true healing going across the universe. And we know that to change society, those are things that have to take place. People have to know that love is truly the answer, and they have to have the support system to be able to put all the pain away so they can become a better self and be an example out in the world. You can rescue them every day. If you don't have a piece to help them once you rescue them, especially children, if they were raised and breeding into be prostitutes for these people, this is the only way they know make money. And you've got to realize, and I do have the numbers for you I can give you, and they did not go to school. They do not have an education. So they cannot go get a job to make money to survive. So the only life that they know is selling their body. having a handler and trafficking, they really do not know the means to protect them, but I saw this with my veterans as well. And I fought the Pentagon on this. The Pentagon actually wanted to say, can we change your program to 3 months? I said, no. And they won't be held in 3 months. And they had to have that support to go through a complete life cycle where your mind is healing, and they get the courage and they understand that and there's something within them. So in this entire process, we can talk about rescuing all day. Your rescuing will not do any good if you're rescuing teenagers, that this is the only life they know, is to be trafficked, and
Right.
they're going to go back in the system, or they do not have sources to survive. And so you'll see the suicide numbers, and you'll also see, and I've got that number of the children in foster care, oh my God, that actually goes into the prison system by the age of 21. I'll send you all these statistics to save you some time.
Okay.
It is unreal. And so CPS is actually kind of the avenue of what's going on in the prison system. And I was at a summit with Walmart and all of them, and tore them up on that avenue. And we were drugging them in our schools. We're drugging them at the age of 3, 4. Do you know that they're, it's unreal, the number, I think it's like right 7% of children under the age of 18 months are on antidepressants. They're drugging our children. So you do that, and then when they become 18, they're no longer under their parents' insurance or job and everything. They do not know how to behave. They therefore go to the street because all they've known is being drugged medically, and they cannot afford the medication. So they go on the streets, they buy something, they get arrested, and there is your avenue to the prison system. Your foster care system, your CPS system is what is leading to the majority of your unwed pregnancies, and they are as well as the pimp for your private prison system.